Hey there, I'm Alex Kidman, and this is the Motorola Edge 50. Let's get into the review. So last year I reviewed the Motorola Edge 40 and I really liked it. That was a really good phone, really good value, very, very impressive. So my hopes were really high for the Edge 50. But it hasn't happened that way. It really hasn't happened that way. This isn't a bad phone, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of disappointing both coming from the Edge 40, but also comparable to the rest of the Edge 50 range, and especially the Edge 50 Neo, which landed on my review desk at exactly the same time. So I have tested them concurrently, and between the two, I find it really hard to recommend the Edge 50. Let's get into why that is. So here in Australia, the Edge 50 is available in 3 different colour hues: jungle green, peach fuzz, and koala grey. And I really wish Motorola had sent me the koala grey. And it's not just a proud, patriotic Australian thing there. It's the fact that the koala grey comes in a suede finish where the peach fuzz and jungle green come in vegan leather. And I think most of my viewers know by now I'm not a fan of the feel of vegan leather. Now, the good thing here is that Motorola do provide a case in the box. I'm just going to lean over and grab that. Here it is. And as you might expect, I have spent much of my reviewing time with the case in situ. Now, the challenging thing there, though, is that it's not much of a case. It doesn't protect the sides at all, just the back, but it does stop me having to touch vegan leather, for which I'm quite grateful. Still, if I was looking at this longer term, I'd probably look at picking up a third-party case that actually did protect the sides. Cases are a smart investment in protecting your phones, people. In display terms, it packs in a 6.7-inch 120Hz capable OLED screen with what Motorola calls an endless edge. Now, that does not mean that the phone screen stretches out to infinity, because how would you even pick it up? No, it just means it's a curved display screen. And I know this is a contentious thing. Some people really like the look of curved displays. Others find them really distracting or don't like the way their fingers slip off the sides of them or the way they have to hold them. If you don't like curved screens, then, well, actually, if you don't like curved screens, buy the Edge 50 Neo, because it doesn't have one. But the other Edge phones tend to, and there's no Edge 50 without a curved screen. Still, it's a nice enough display. It works quite well. Controls and inputs are kept simple. You've just got standard volume buttons and power on the right-hand side and an in-display fingerprint reader. Now, once it was set up, it hasn't really given me any grief. It did take me a little bit longer than usual to actually get it to register my fingerprints, which is kind of unusual in this day and age, but may have just been a glitch in my particular phone. As I say, once it was set up, no worries, but set up took more touches than I really wanted. One nice feature here is full IP68 water resistance. You don't see that on every Motorola phone. Reminder though, that is not free license to, go surfing on this phone if you're very, very tiny, because it won't survive that kind of thing. But if it drops in water, if it gets rained on, if it gets a bit damp, it should survive that without too many problems. On the camera front, look, there has been an upgrade from the Edge 40 here, because where the Edge 40 had a 50 megapixel primary and 13 megapixel ultra-wide, along with a 32 megapixel front-facing camera, the Edge 50 has a 50 megapixel wide, 13 megapixel ultra-wide, and 10 megapixel telephoto 3 times at the rear, along with a 32 megapixel selfie snapper. And the inclusion of that 10 times telephoto is a really nice thing to see, with a slight catch that I'll get to in a minute. Well, actually, 2 slight catches. So it's great to see telephoto here, because at this price point, you don't often see it, and you certainly don't often see 3 times telephoto, but you do have to somewhat temper your expectations, because the results can be quite mixed. So straight 3 times, not a problem. I'll throw up a sample image here, for example, where I saw a sulfur-crested cockatoo in a nearby tree and thought, oh yeah, I'll get a snap of that. And the 3 times shot is fine. Now, Motorola lets you push that into digital hybrid, and usually Motorola's really conservative about these things. It'll usually really dial it back compared to its competition, but here it's decided to go all out. You can go up to 30 times. So what does a 30 times sulfur-crested cockatoo look like? It looks like a horror show. That's what it looks like. This is not a good photo in any way, shape, or form. So like I say, you do have to dial your expectations back there. The other catch, though, is that the cheaper Motorola Edge 50 Neo has the exact same cameras. It's also got the telephoto. It's $100 cheaper. And if the telephoto really matters to you, I don't know why you wouldn't save the $100. And in fact, the smaller phone there, because it's a smaller body phone, may also be easier for you to shoot with because it's just easier to hold, easier to frame. I like that in a smaller phone where you can get it. Overall though, the Edge 50 shoots reasonably well for a phone in its class. I mean, the typical things that will affect mid-range phones, so really low light or really fast action, it's not great on, but it's certainly suitable and appropriate for its class. The big challenge here really is that, for whatever reason, Motorola opted to put the same camera in the cheaper phone, and that can't help but make the Edge 50 feel like it's not the camera phone to buy if that's the feature that matters to you most. On the performance side, the Edge 50 is built around a Snapdragon 7 Gen 1 processor with 12GB of RAM and 256GB of storage. There's no capacity for microSD expansion. The SIM card tray is a single SIM card tray, although it does have eSIM capability as well, if that's important to you. And in performance terms, the Snapdragon 7 Gen 1, well, it does okay, but it sure could do better at this price point. So I grabbed results for a bunch of similarly priced phones at the time of recording. That's kind of important because Android prices do fall over time. But at the time of recording, here's how it compares using Geekbench 6's CPU test. And yeah, look, it was surprising to me to find the Pixel 8a already selling for only about $50 more than the Edge 50 at some retailers, but the performance gulf there isn't insubstantial, and even if you can't find a lower cost Pixel 8a, the Samsung Galaxy A55 outclasses it, and that's a phone that is cheaper at retail than the Edge 50 is. It's not good that the Edge 40 outpaces it either. And of course, the Edge 50 Neo, whilst it's marginally slower, again is a cheaper phone. None of this compares well for the Edge 50. And it's an even less flattering story if we look at GPU performance using 3D Mark. Now, none of this means there's steam escaping from the sides or this is an incredibly laggy or slow or terrible phone, but it does mean that in nearly every way you can get something that's a little bit better or a little bit cheaper or both at this price point. It's not a huge selling point for the Edge 50, and it kind of doesn't get better because where the Edge 50 Neo, for example, gets 5 years of OS upgrades and 5 years of security updates, the Edge 50, the more expensive phone, only gets 2 OS upgrades and 3 years of security updates. Now that 2-3 split, that's very classic Motorola. They do that across a lot of their phones. Not an uncommon thing to see, but that doesn't mean it's a welcome thing to see. Samsung does it better at this price point. Google does it better at this kind of price point. Motorola needs to do better, and they can because they've done it with the Neo, but they haven't done it with the straight Edge 50, which again, just isn't that appealing. On the networks front, this is a 5G phone, just sub 6 GHz, as is the case for nearly all the Android phones in Australia, and I can moan about that in a different video, I guess. But that means that I hit pretty much exactly my standard kind of rates here on the Telstra network in Sydney. Your network performance may, of course, vary, but I typically see between about 200 to 400 meg down as peak, and that's pretty much exactly what this hit, which is fine, perfectly acceptable, but nothing to really go out of your way to get. On the battery front, here is where the Edge 50 somewhat redeems itself. So it's packing in a 5,000 mAh battery, which is very, very standard across most of the Android world. Notably, the Neo has a much smaller battery, which is just odd to me, but it does. And putting it through my standard YouTube battery test of a 1-hour video at maximum brightness and moderate volume saw the Edge 50 triumph over all of its competition. Now that is only by 1 percentage point, but every percentage point in this test actually can count for hours of extra actual runtime. All of these things are relative. Of course, if you really hammer the Edge 50, yes, it will go flat within a day. But anecdotally, yeah, it's a pretty easy all-day phone, and that's a really good thing. It's also pretty easy to charge. It has Qi compatibility for up to 15-watt charging, but it will also handle USB-C wired charging if you want it to charge reasonably quickly, which you probably do. And there's a 68-watt charger in the box, which is really nice to see. Now, that's all really well and good, but again, the Neo has exactly the same feature set. Same charger, same Qi. None of this says, run out and buy the Edge 50 to me. Don't know about you. So yeah, should you buy the Edge 50? Look, this one's a really hard sell to me. Outside of seeing it on special, the Edge 50 Neo only just underperforms on it. Unless you wanted, for example, the slightly larger screen size that this brings to the equation, or you really love a curved screen and Motorola specifically, this is a really hard phone to recommend. If you want what I think is one of the better Edge phones that Motorola has this year, I would opt for the Neo every day of the week. If you want the highest performing phone, that's probably the A55, or if you can find one, a Pixel 8a at this price or nearabouts. And that leaves the Motorola Edge 50 as a kind of also ran, which was not what I was expecting, given how much I liked the Edge 40. Anyway, that's my take on the Motorola Edge 50. Got any thoughts? Hit me up in the comments below, and as always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.